There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon. This is episode number 171, and today in the show, we're joined by Justin Zarr, an Illinois bowhunter and host of bowhunting.com's Bowhunt or Die web show. And we're talking early season, October hunting tactics, chasing suburban bucks, and much, much more. All right, welcome to another episode of the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And today in the show, we are joined by our pal and super serious Illinois whitetail hunter, Justin Zarr of bowhunting.com and the Bowhunt or Die web show. And in a few minutes here, we're going to get Justin on with us, and I'm hoping we can just dig deep into his plans and strategies for hunting this upcoming month of October. I'm thinking we can probably touch on everything from early season ideas to October lull tips to hunting the pre-rut, and even maybe we even get into the rut phases, because who's not looking forward to November. But I want to make sure we dive into all that. Tree stand placement, trail cameras, and all sorts of good stuff. So along the way, I think Dan and I should be able to chip in a thought or two as well. But speaking of Dan, Mr. Co-host, you are the man of the week. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
That is awesome. You got a new healthy mouth to feed.
Yep. And I'm not doing any of the feeding right now. That's all on mama.
Yeah.
But so, my wife is a champ. Like, I just feel like she was born and designed to have kids, because every time we've gone into the hospital, it's been a breeze. There's been no complications, knock on wood. Just very happy with how everything turned out. And I know not a lot of people live around the area that I live that may listen to this, but the hospital, Mercy Hospital, where I've had all three of my children, have made childbirth and everything just amazing. So shout out to Mercy Hospital. If anybody listens, go have a kid there, man, because they're outstanding at what they do.
Maybe we'll make the drive out there this February.
Mm-hmm. That's a perfect time.
So, do you want to share the name for those who haven't seen online yet?
Yeah, his name is Knox Daniel Johnson, and he's a badass dude.
I was gonna say Knox Johnson. He just sounds like he's gonna be trouble. Between that and Mac Johnson,
yeah,
like you're gonna have two tyrants on your hands, is what I think.
Well, I wanted to name our second boy a name that would go well with Max, so when they get introduced as like, and new tag team champions of the world, Mac and Knox they're kind of some badass names. So
yeah, no, that sounds about right. They sound like the types of kids that would like take a manhole cover and pull it into their apartment.
I am screwed. They say, anything you do when you're a kid that's crazy and dumb, your kids are going to do that same shit just so that it's karma, right?
Oh, yeah. It's coming back to you, Dan.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. That's exciting, though, man. I'm very, very happy for you. So glad that everything went well, and now it's a new phase. So far, it's been a handful of days. What's it like having 3 kids?
Well, let me tell you what it's like. Okay, so right now we are in the adjustment phase, right? So we're home. I haven't gone back to work yet. I got some time off. I'm going to spend it here at the house. I'm helping the wife adjust, helping the kids adjust. It is like, and I hate to use this reference, but I'm going to use it anyway. It's like a hurricane is offshore from your house and it's slowly creeping its way to your house. Shit is going to hit the fan really soon, but you're just almost like you're ignoring it because, I mean, I've been through it twice. He's sleeping right now. He's up. He's on a really good schedule, but in 2-3 weeks when he's going to start crying more. He's going to start, and that brings stress. And then the kids, it's just like this blender of love and hate all in one, one little compartment. And it is going to get crazy.
Oh man.
But I'm ready for it.
Yeah. You know what you're getting into a little bit, at least.
Yep. At this age, you can start ignoring kids a little bit more. You can start, hey, I'm mad. Matt took a toy from me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's the iPad. Oh, it's like.
So that's the trick.
Right. Kids are kind of like junkies. So they want all these things. And then you're just like, okay, well, here. Here's a fix.
Go in the room, lock yourself in the closet with this. You'll be good.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, this is good advice from me, Dan. I appreciate that.
I'm sure I give horrible parenting advice.
I've got some baby related news too.
Okay. Uh-oh.
We had our ultrasound.
Okay.
And
how many weeks?
We're just over 20 weeks now.
Okay. So did you find out?
We found out.
Are you going to share it?
I am going to share it. We're not the type for surprises and stuff. So, yeah, man, we have a baby human on the way. So very excited about that.
That's great news.
Yes, it is a human. It has legs and arms and a head, and it is a boy.
Uh-oh.
We got a little baby boy Kenyon coming in February. So
that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
You think it will be born with a sweet goatee?
It wouldn't take much for him to match his old man's goatee, so it's quite possible.
Well, that's awesome. So
yeah, it's pretty
obviously, as a father, having a son is a big, strong moment. Was your wife like? Did she kind of want a girl, or was she just like, as long as it's happy?
Yeah, I think we were both like, as long as it's healthy, we're okay with whatever. Although, I think my wife might have been just as excited about it being a boy. I don't know. She's a little bit tomboyish herself. She's not like super, super girly. I mean, she likes all the outdoorsy stuff that I do. But I think whether we had a boy or a girl, that child would probably go and do the same things, at least because that's what we're doing at first. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm pumped. It's exciting. I was the last Kenyan in my family, so the responsibility to continue the bloodline was on me.
That's a big responsibility.
Yeah, so I feel like I've achieved that hopefully here with the little guy. So yeah, real excited.
And the empire, the Wired to Hunt empire can continue.
Yeah, we'll pass this on to him in 20 years, see what he can do with it. So yeah, man, that was exciting, and it was just cool that we could see the baby and see that it was healthy and moving around, and that was pretty wild. And then at the same time, like the last couple of days, now we're starting to feel him too. So I can feel him like kicking and stuff on Kylie's belly, which is kind of neat. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff. And there's that whole opening day of bow hunting season coming up too. So
I know. Are you pumped for that? Or like for me, I'm, to be honest, I have so many other things going on in my life right now that I just have made up the decision mentally. I may go Sunday, I may not, but I've just kind of, I'm going more with the flow. Like if I can get out I can get out early season, but I really don't care. I want to, but I don't care if I miss it. I'm kind of put all my apples in one basket for the rut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and given your circumstances, that seems like a good idea. Just keep expectations low, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'm going to make up for you on the excitement level because I'm at like a level 13 excitement right now.
Okay.
Really,
Okay.
really,
like
really
that.
pumped. I mean, I've been spending like every night that there's not like every night that I've been home, where I haven't been like leaving the house for an event or doing something with Kylie. I've been going out to near one of my hunting properties and glassing, trying to get eyes on bucks and stuff. So I've been sitting out doing a lot of glass time and studying trail camera pictures, and I'm obsessively already checking the weather forecast. And
Right.
I think I got my plan for opening day and the second day, and man, I'm just ready for it to get here.
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah, dude.
So are you gonna just go with the weather this year, or are you gonna, go out and grind right away?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to be doing a lot of hunting, but targeting Holyfield at first is going to be a day or two kind of thing. We do have good weather in the forecast, relatively good weather. It's been like in the mid-high 80s, even into the 90s over the last week for us, but in a couple days, we're getting a cold front hitting. So it's going to be about 3 days before opening day that cold front's really going to be hitting hard, and temps are going to drop down to the 60s. Like low 60s, high 50s, so like a 20 degree or so drop. So I think that's going to be good in general. I wish that opening day was like Thursday, so you could be hunting the day of the cold front or the day after.
Yeah.
But so we're not going to get the very best movement, but I think it'll still certainly be better than it was, this past week. Yeah. So Sunday night, I'm going to get in there and hunt one of those core spots. I've been hunting Holyfield where I've had a lot of those encounters with him. And I've got this year, there's this one spot that I hunted a lot for him, and I had like the 2 times I've passed on him, the 3 times sort of, we're all in this one little food plot core area, and I've got a tree stand set up for like a north or northwest or northeast wind, and then I have a ground blind that I put in last year that I had set up for southerly winds. I replaced that ground blind with a hay bale blind this year. Because basically I just wanted more room. That ground blind I used last year was just a pop-up, and it just was not enough room for me to be in there comfortably with my tripod to film and for me to be able to draw back and everything. So the hay bale is much bigger, just much better structure for it. And that's tucked in there super nice because I put it right inside of like my food plot screen, and then that screen has grown up all around it. So it's basically completely covered on 3 sides, and then just in the front I've cut down the cover so I got shooting lanes. But it's very well secluded in there, and it looks like a hay bale anyway, so they're not worried about it at all. And we've got southerly winds in the forecast for Monday and Sunday, so that can be good-ish. When I've studied all of his movement patterns and stuff, like all of the daytime trail camera pictures I have of him up here in the front are with like a south or southwest wind. And I'm going to have a little bit of that. I'm going to have like southeast-ish winds, I guess, on Sunday, and then south winds on Monday. So I'm going to get in there and hunt that ground blind. It's going to be great from an access standpoint. I can walk through a standing cornfield far away from where these deer are bedded, drop into this creek, walk the creek all the way to the back of the blind, and then just pop right in the blind. So I feel good about getting in there. And then I think to get out, I'm going to try to convince my wife to drive the 4-wheeler out to this area and pick me up there so I'm not walking around after dark spooking anything.
Nice.
And
nice.
I'm going to do 2 hunts like that, see how that goes, and then I think then I'm going to stay out. I'm going to stay out completely for weeks. Just because, unless there's something that's like he's showing up over and over and over and over again in daylight, I'm not going to push it like I did last year. I kept, we talked about it before. We kept getting these tiny cold fronts every weekend, and I was like, well, I should try it because there's going to be a 10-degree temperature drop. I'm not doing that this year. But I've got, a couple public spots down here that I'm going to be trying out and going to go up north the weekend following opening day up to our northern Michigan property. And I'm really excited about that. So going to spend like 4 days up there hunting. and hunt a mixture of our little 40-acre piece, and then there's a bunch of public surrounding it. So I'm going to do some scouting and hang and hunt some spots out there, I think, too. And that's kind of my game plan for early October through the mid-October time period is balance between northern Michigan and the public land down here. And then we'll see about Ohio. I'm undecided on if we're going to take a quick trip to Ohio early or not. Historically, hasn't been very good early season for us. We've had one good mature buck encounter in all the years we've been going down there in the early season, and that was it. So kind of up in the air on that stuff, but I don't know. I think there's a chance for some opening day or second day success here in Michigan, but I would not say my confidence level is super high. Because
you're gonna kill a doe?
No, not here. Just because I don't want to shoot something and be walking all over the property, tracking all over the place. I just want to keep my impact absolutely to as close to zero as I can until I kill Holyfield or if he disappears.
Right.
But if that happens, if I kill him or if someone else kills him, then it'll just be doe patrol for the rest of the season probably and hit it really hard. But what do you got going over there, Dan?
Oh, I dropped something.
But I was just gonna say he hasn't been showing up. I haven't seen him yet. I've glassed this area quite a bit. Still haven't seen him. I have him on camera 3 times in the last month. That's it. 2 of those were in daylight.
Now, last year you were battling the same kind of thoughts because wasn't he showing up like for a long period of time, really close to daylight in the evenings or right towards the tail end of the morning on your cameras, and you had already gone in there several times to hunt him, and you just were getting really worried about, spooking him off your property?
Yeah, I mean, I think like in early and mid-October, there was, I'd seen him a couple times in daylight, like right at the end of daylight when I was glassing from my little scouting area. I'd gotten a few pictures that were right in the edge of daylight and stuff. So you had some like signs pointing to, yes, you should go in there and hunt him. But then because of the way this property lays out, there's only a couple spots I could actually hunt him. So yeah, that challenge was, how much can I get away with when I'm pounding the same spots over and over again?
Right.
And it's hard to say if I made a mistake or not because I did that, hunted over and over again, and still October 24th, after I'd hunted, several weekends in a row for him, in the same spot again, October 24th, I had a shot at him, at 40 yards. And then I almost had a shot at him the next day. So, I kept seeing him, but it was after that, then like the 26th through like the 8th, then I saw him, but he wasn't coming over to my side. I was seeing him staying back in cover. So I wonder if at that point, if he'd kind of caught on to what was going on and knew that he should stay back in that cover till after dark. So my hope is this year, other than these first couple hunts, to stay out completely until that late October time frame again. And then hopefully instead of like one chance, maybe I'll have a week worth of, opportunities where he might be willing to stray over towards me during daylight. So that's at least the high level plan. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just excited.
Just like, I don't know about you, but I like to put early season plans together as well. And then as soon as opening day hits, it's all out the window, right? And you're doing something completely different than what you originally planned.
Yeah. You just got to kind of go with the flow, right? See what's happening, observe, study whatever new patterns are emerging, and make an adjustment. So, yeah, dude, I'm fired up. And hopefully next week, maybe if the stars align and I get super lucky and that weather's good, maybe next week I will have the happiest story of all time for you.
Hey, man, I hope so.
Me too.
I want a phone call. I want to be on your phone call list if you kill him. You know what I mean? Like, first is obviously the wife. Second, I don't care, your dad maybe. Then maybe if I'm top 10, that'd be awesome.
Oh, you're definitely top 10, dude.
Okay, perfect.
You'll get a in the field call, like that shaky voice, loud whisper type phone call. Damn it! I just did it. I sure hope.
I love those calls.
Oh, those are the best. Those are the absolute best. I am so ready for like a blood trail and for a phone call from a buddy or like a BBD text message, and like everyone gets together and drinks a beer and goes hiking out in the woods. Like, I'm so just pumped out of my mind for it. So,
Right. Absolutely.
it's a great time of year, my friend. It's a great time of year. But we should probably bring Justin on because he's sitting around waiting for us, and maybe he can BS with us a little bit about how excited we are too. So let's take a quick break here for a word from our partners at Sitka Gear, and then we'll bring our pal Justin Zarr on the line.
For this week's Sitka story, we're joined by Alex Comstock of North Dakota, and Alex is going to be telling us about a special early season hunt with his whitetail mentor.
So it was about 2 weeks ago, and I was sitting over a bean field with my buddy Drew, who is kind of like my hunting mentor per se. He's the one who got me started into this whole madness when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And we had never sat together before, so we had scouted this new spot and found this pond that was right on the edge of this bean field, and decided it would be a good time to sit it, being that it was a really warm day. And I thought it'd be a cool opportunity to sit with him, so I decided to sit with him and film that night, and we ended up having an encounter with a big 4 or 5 year old mature buck, and he kind of popped out of this bean field about 300 or 400 yards away and was working his way right at us, and he got into about 80 to 100 yards and picked his head up and started staring at this road, because we were hunting fairly close to a road, and just stood at stared at the road for about 10 minutes or so, and then just took off and headed out of our life. And even though it was kind of an unsuccessful hunt, it was a really cool opportunity to be able to be sitting with, my good friend, and being able to get it all on film, and being at the one that he's got me into hunting. It was just a really cool opportunity, and one of my favorite nights of hunting, probably of my life.
On Alex's hunt, he was wearing Sitka's Equinox system. If you'd like to create a Sitka story of your own, or to learn more about Sitka's technical hunting apparel, visit sitkagear.com.
All right, we've got Mr. Justin Zarr now on the line with us. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
We're good. Me and Dan have just been talking about how excited we are for our opening day, which is coming up here in a few days. But you guys have been going at it for a while over by you up in, Wisconsin's got the early season, right? Not in Illinois,
yeah.
though.
Yeah, Illinois. So I'm the same as you guys. I'm October 1st. I have not been in the woods with a bow in my hand yet. A lot of the guys on our team have. I am not one of those fortunate individuals. So much like the two of you, I'm kind of chomping at the bit to be able to get out in the woods and shoot at something here pretty soon.
Yeah. So where did Todd kill his buck? Was that Wisconsin?
That was Wisconsin, yeah.
Okay.
So where we're located here, we're in the suburbs of Chicago. So we're actually really close to the Wisconsin line, maybe half hour to Wisconsin. Todd actually owns a little bit of property up in Green Lake County. So he's about, 2.5, 3 hours north of here. So he killed his buck on opening day up in Wisconsin. He usually likes to, they open a couple weeks early, so he likes to get up there. That first weekend or two is usually just, kind of a doe mission. But, he was fortunate enough to get a good buck finally on opening day. And then a couple days later, he left, and he's currently in Wyoming. And actually, he shot an elk yesterday. So I think he's coming home today or tomorrow, yeah.
Nice.
So he's off to a heck of a start, I would say, for him.
Man, sounds like it. The pressure's on you now, Justin.
No kidding, right? You're telling me.
So
he's got an antelope, an elk, and a whitetail all under his belt. It's not even October for first yet. I haven't even been hunting, so.
Good Lord. So for those maybe who don't know who Todd is, or maybe who you are, can you just give us a quick 101 on what you guys are doing over at bowhunting.com or bowhunting.com and Bowhunter Die and all that good stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So, Todd, when we refer to him as Todd Graff, he's the owner of bowhunting.com. I've been working for Todd for about, I want to say 14 years now. Him and I have been working together. When I first started working for him, Todd owns an IT consulting company and a web development company. So that's what we do. That's our real jobs, right? I build websites for people, a lot of people in the hunting industry. But then, because Todd was a pretty smart dude back in the 90s, he bought a bunch of domain names, bowhunting.com being one of them. So we started that website. I want to say it's been about 10 years ago now. Or maybe just shy of 10 years, maybe 9 years now. And so we started that website back in the day. kind of is just doing some e-commerce stuff. And then we kind of got out of doing e-commerce, and we really just focused mostly on information. So, anything and everything you could want to know about bow hunting, we try to have on bowhunting.com, whether it's stories, how-tos, gear reviews. We do a lot of coverage at the ATA show every year, filming new products. And then about, I think it's 7 years ago now, because we're in our 8th season, we decided for some crazy reason to start an online hunting show. We figured we had this awesome platform with bowhunting.com. So we started our show, which we call Bowhunt or Die. We're in our 8th season now. And it's 100% online. So you watch it, through the website, through our Roku channel, through YouTube. You can download it through iTunes. We have an Apple TV channel. And we're actually just getting ready to launch our mobile app here in the next week or so, once the fine folks at Apple approve that and get it pushed out. So then guys will be able to, get notifications right on their phone when a new episode goes live. So that's kind of our spiel and what we do over here at bowhunting.com and Bowhunt or Die.
That's awesome. Well, you guys really do have one of the best online hunting shows out there. I've always enjoyed it. But I've seen sometimes, you guys lots of times before hunt on your show, you'll have like a little profile of the hunter talking a little bit about, who this is, what he's doing. And I've heard, I've seen you sometime listed as Todd's manservant. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's my little joke. We get to make up our little fun facts or our little occupations for our intro. So yeah, that's kind of what I call it. I get the glorious title of general manager here, which pretty much means you get to do a little bit of everything. So I pretty much, run, I'd say 90% of the day-to-day operations for, really 3 of our businesses: IT, consulting, web development, and bowhunting.com. So it keeps me busy here at the office while Todd's out killing stuff most of the time.
Man, you got the raw end of the deal there.
Yeah, everyone thinks working in the hunting industry is great, so you actually have to do the work part.
So speaking of raw deals, just before we started recording,
yes,
we were talking about how Dan just had his 3rd, and you had
yes,
3 kids too.
Raw deal.
That is a raw deal for sure.
So how has having 3 kids impacted your hunting so far?
Well, I tell you what, we had our 3rd last year, smack in the middle of the hunting season. It was October 26th. So that definitely threw a wrench in my works last year. I still got to hunt a fair amount. But, I kept everything local. I didn't really travel at all last year to hunt. And at my local spots that I hunt, I just didn't really have the caliber of deer I was looking to shoot last year. So I ended up not shooting a buck. Shot a couple does last year, and that was it. Fortunately, now that, we're a year into number 3, just about, things have kind of leveled back out and a smooth sailing ahead, hopefully. So I'm pretty optimistic that I'm going to be able to hunt a fair amount this fall, much to the dismay of my wife, I'm sure. But she gets to stay home now. She doesn't have to work anymore. So the trade-off was kind of, you do that and I'm going to go hunt. So I do have a couple trips to Kansas planned for later this fall. And then I have a couple really good bucks that I'm chasing here locally at home in Illinois, finally. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to get this show on the road here come October 1st.
Have you thought about hiring a babysitter while you're gone to lighten the load? Because I think I'm going to be doing that this year.
Yeah, see, I just don't have enough money for that. So I just would be calling in favors to family members. You want to talk about a raw deal? I'll tell you guys this. My wife's sister is turning 40 this year. So they decided they want to go on a little girls' weekend. They're going on like a 4-day cruise, her sister and some friends. And they planned this for November 2nd through November 6th. That was the date that they picked to go on this cruise. So I am flying solo on dad duty for those few days, which unfortunately I don't have much of a leg to stand on because I'm gone in Kansas for like 5 days immediately before that. And then like another 4 days if I don't tag out pretty soon after that. So I kind of just bit my tongue and said, you know what? It is what it is. Hopefully I have a deer killed before November.
In Iowa, you can drop your kids off at hospitals. I guess it's called like a safe zone or something, and they don't ask really any questions.
Yeah, I think that's like if you want to give them up permanently. I'm not sure you're allowed to come back back later and reclaim them. Changed my mind, guys. Sorry, I'm here to pick the kids up.
That's an interesting plan, Dan.
At least I'm gonna give it a try.
So I plan on calling in favors to family members where I can. Fortunately, the two biggest bucks I'm hunting are both local to me, within 15-20 minute drive of the house, which will make things pretty nice for this fall.
That
Leave
is
the kids in the car.
Yeah.
Exactly. Make sure their iPads are charged up, and I'll be back in a couple hours.
Yeah, Dan was just talking about how he compares his children to junkies, and he just provides them their fix when he needs a little alone time.
Right, the iPad.
Yeah, it's kind of a fairly accurate statement. When they're really, really little, it's mostly just food, and then once they get bigger, it becomes iPads and other things.
Well, I've got lots to learn, it seems, that's for sure.
Yeah, yes, you do. Yes, you do.
So you said you got a couple good local bucks. What's the story on them?
Yeah, the biggest story I think I get asked the most about was, last year, one of the farms that I hunt, I passed on a really great deer. A lot of people that watch our show told me I was insane to let him walk by me, but we ended up picking up both of his sheds. He scored right at about 160 inches. But I knew he was a 3-year-old, and I really just wanted to see what was going to happen if he made it to 4. That particular spot is a bow-only area. There's no gun hunting. It's a private farm. There's only 2 of us that hunt it. It's pretty big. So I felt like he had a really good opportunity to make it through. Fortunately, he did. And as I suspected, when he went from 2 to 3, he jumped from probably 125, 130 inches to pushing 160. And then he made another jump from 3 to 4. I'm going to guess him in the high 180s, low 190s this year. Yeah, he's a great deer. I mean, honestly, it's the biggest deer I've ever had an opportunity to know that I'm hunting in my 25 or so years of hunting now. So I feel pretty fortunate to be able to chase a deer of that caliber. I'd really like to see what he looks like at 5 or 6, but I'm not letting him walk by me again. Yeah. If he happens to come by at 4 years old, I am not that kind of guy that's not going to shoot that deer this year. So yeah, he's kind of my number one target. And then when I've got another farm that I hunt that's got a really nice, super clean 10-point that's probably going to score in the 160s would be my guess, maybe mid to upper 160s as a 10. So yeah, those are the 2 deer that I'm really going to be primarily targeting for this fall.
What's this stuff like? So this is Northwest Illinois, you said. So are we getting into like the hills near the Mississippi yet, or is it flat cropland?
No. So we're like where I'm here local. We're almost like Northeast Illinois.
Oh, okay.
So the big deer that I'm hunting is in Lake County, which basically extends all the way to Lake Michigan, hence the name. So we're Northeast. We do a lot of our hunting in Northwestern Illinois. Todd actually owns a farm out there, and we've got some leases and some other property. So that is the real, hilly kind of bluff country right along the Mississippi there. But with these 2 deer local here at home, one's in Lake County, one's in McHenry County. The terrain here is fairly flat, small woodlots in between subdivisions and whatever agriculture remains. So it's really suburban hunting, sitting in your tree stand and listening to dogs barking and traffic going by. But, when you got a couple really good deer to chase, a lot of times I've been guilty of leaving to chase the experience, I think, more than the deer, because hunting around here doesn't bring with it, to me anyways, the same feeling that I get when I go out west or I go up north or I go somewhere where it's more rural. But with 3 kids at home and 2 giant bucks to chase, I'm not going really much of anywhere this year. I'll be going after those deer.
Is there anything dramatically different about how you actually have to hunt or how these deer behave in these like suburban areas compared to your western, more rural spots?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, out here, it's a lot of really small woodlots. There's just not a lot of big timber around anymore. So, access is always one of the hardest things of being able to get in somewhere and not, booger all the deer up on your way either in or out. There's a misconception out there a lot of times that when you're hunting these suburban deer that they're kind of stupid and they don't care about people intruding into their land. But I can tell you they're every bit as cautious as any other deer I've ever hunted, especially when you get some of these older age class bucks. Sure, you can drive around some of these areas that are ultra populated with little forest preserves in them. And yeah, the deer will damn near eat right out of your hand. But in a normal situation like where I'm at, I mean, believe me, a deer gets downwind of you and it's gone, no differently than any other deer. And I think what makes hunting around here even probably more difficult is that our deer really don't come out into the open very much until dark, because you're hard pressed to find a field edge or somewhere that a deer can come out into that can't be seen from a house or a road. And especially a bigger buck, man. I mean, there's just so many people and so much traffic and activity. They step out into a field for 30 seconds and there's cars pulled over on the side of the road, looking at them. So, it makes it difficult because they just, those hunts that you see, when we all watch videos or, where Dan's out in freaking Iowa where there's just giant bucks running across a cornfield and you
All
rattle
the
to
time.
them, they come running in. Like,
Shut
that
your
doesn't
mouth.
really happen.
So
That
easy.
doesn't happen here.
Shut your mouth, guys. I'm telling you, right? God dang it! I tell you, the last. Oh man, everybody's like, dude, but you're in Iowa, dude. But you're in Iowa. Dude, I'm not hunting on the same properties that like the Drurys or Lakoski's hunting on, right? I don't
You
have
got
like.
better. I heard you got better
Dan,
property.
Dan, you
Yeah.
can't. We don't need to divulge your secrets, but you can't complain.
Well, I can't complain, but it's the only difference really between where some people are hunting and where I hunt is just giant racks.
Sure.
That's really the only difference. The age class, I mean, yeah, that maybe a little bit bump in the age class compared to Illinois or like Minnesota or Wisconsin, but I'm still hunting on a farm that's not mine. I'm still hunting on it's got pressure, it's active. So
Sure.
I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, it's never easy, right?
that's just
I
me
mean,
defending myself.
Well, there's a huge misconception by a ton of people that, everything you see on, TV, quote unquote, or online or wherever you're watching it these days, that for some reason, those people are hunting in different situations or scenarios than you are. And in some cases that's true, but I think the majority of cases, I mean, think about how many people are filming hunts out there. I mean, it's not just the Drurys and the Lakoskis. I mean, there's plenty of dudes like us out there filming hunts that are just on, small little 80, 40 acres, 20 acres, 80 acre pieces that we're sharing with other guys, and we're dealing with the same stuff that everybody else deals with, but there's the right way and the wrong way to hunt it, and being smart. And guys that are successful on a regular basis doesn't necessarily mean that they have the greatest spot in the world. Sometimes they're just better hunters, and I've just kind of come to the realization, hey man, some people are better hunters than I am. That's okay. I'm confident in my abilities and what I know how to do, but I'm also not foolish enough to believe that I'm the greatest hunter that's ever walked the planet Earth.
Yeah, that's a good perspective to have. It probably helps keep the frustration level maybe one tiny bit below 10 at all times. So
That's right.
I think so. Anyways, you got to maintain some sort of sanity, and you got to set your expectations to a realistic level. I can't expect every year to go out and try to kill a 180 or 190 when most of the time there isn't one there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably another huge misconception that people have. And I know that, Mark, you've touched on it in a few podcasts, just talking about, like, for example, Holyfield.
Mm-hmm.
There's a deer that just, like, huge body, but he's just doesn't have the genetics to be a 180 or 190 inch deer. And there's plenty of those deer in Iowa. There's plenty of them in Illinois. They're all over the place. I've got a farm that I lease in northwestern Illinois right now that we probably have 8 or 10 bucks on trail camera this summer. I don't think I have one over 140 inches. I got a deer out there. I don't know how old he is, but he's a tank. He's got to be 300 plus pounds on the hook during the summer. And he's like an 80-inch rack.
Really?
I mean, it's like, yeah, he's just doesn't have the genetics,
crazy.
and it's just the way it is.
So is he a shooter still for you?
I think so. And here in Illinois, we're very fortunate to get, $2 as a resident. So, I'm not planning on hunting that farm a ton. Where I live here and where we hunt here, there's just not a lot of deer in general anymore. We've had CWD now for well over a decade. We have a lot of sharpshooting going on, which I know is kind of a heated debate with hunters. They got signs up all over the place to tell the DNR to stop sharpshooting the deer. So just in general, the deer numbers around here are down. So I don't intend on shooting a doe, I don't think, on either one of my local farms. There's just not a lot of them. So if I want to shoot a doe and get some meat, I really need to head out to my lease, which unfortunately is about 2 hours away. So while I'm out there trying to shoot a doe, if one of these more mature bucks walks by, I'm absolutely going to shoot him. I like shooting deer as much as the next guy, and I'm not going to hold out, for a 160 or better. A good 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old deer walks in front of me, he's getting an arrow flung at him.
Okay, now let's say you fill your tag on a buck like that.
Yep.
Your first tag. You've got your second and final tag, and you still have this 180 running around and this 160 that you've been talking about that you're hoping to see. Now, do you pass on other mature bucks because you want to save that last tag for one of those two, or would you still take your first opportunity at a mature buck?
I'd probably pass for one of those two. I mean, I don't need to fill that second tag. If for some reason this big deer happens to elude me, or my buddy Mike that I hunt with, or all the cars that are around, and make it till 5, I'm not going to be disappointed. I'll actually be pretty excited to see what he turns into next year.
All right.
But believe me, I'm going to hunt my ass off and try to kill him this fall to make sure that doesn't happen. But if it does, I'm not going to be mad about it.
Yeah.
So, if I fill that first tag, the second one is earmarked most likely for the bigger of the two. Even that 160, I may not even hunt that farm at all. I may just focus solely on that other buck and try to kill him with that second tag. But that would be a great problem to have. I guess I'll cross that bridge if and when I get there.
Right. Now, you mentioned a second ago the CWD in your area there.
Yeah.
Do you get your deer tested that you kill in that area?
Yep, I do.
Have you ever had one come up positive?
I have not. I know a couple folks who have in this area, but I personally have not. No, none of mine have tested positive yet. Our infection rate is still pretty low in Illinois, even in what they consider kind of our hot spots, where the CWD, kind of like the ground zero spot, and some of these areas of really high deer densities. Our infection rates are probably still sub 10% in adult males. Whereas up in Wisconsin, Iowa County, that area, you're starting to see 40 to 50% infection rates in adult males that are tested up there. So, that's the debate, right? I mean, guys don't want the DNR sharpshooting the deer because they want to see more deer, right? We're hunters. When we go out, we want to see deer. And it is frustrating when you go out and you see a deer every second or third or fourth sit. It does make for a long season. But at the same time, I don't think there's any question that what the DNR is doing to keep deer numbers in check has certainly helped slow the spread of the disease. As we all know, there's nothing we're going to do to stop it. But we do need to try to do what we can to slow it down. So, I mean, I'm in favor of what the DNR is doing. I believe in it. There's a lot of hunters out there that don't, and will probably be mad at me for saying this. But I mean, there's places out there, in Illinois where there's just simply too many deer, especially in northwestern Illinois. They go do aerial surveys with helicopters, and when you've got deer density of 40, 50, 60 deer per square mile, like there's just too many deer there. The DNR wants to go in and thin the numbers out in those specific areas. They do aerial surveys. They section each county off into zones. They do a survey in that zone and see how many deer are in it during the winter when there's snow on the ground. Then they say, we want to shoot X number of deer out of this zone to try to bring the numbers down. They try to work with private landowners to say, hey, can we come in and sharpshoot? Most of them say no, because they're like, screw you. We don't want you coming here and shooting our deer. And then the big thing that hunters always say is, well, why don't you just let us do it, right? If you're going to shoot them, let us do it. Well, in Illinois, we have unlimited doe tags, right? We can shoot as many does as we want with archery equipment. But nobody's out doing that, right? So everybody says, like, well, why don't you just let us do it? But then they don't actually do it because, again, they want to see a lot of deer. So there's not a lot of options, for the DNR when it comes to trying to control this. So sharpshooting has truly proven to be, I believe, the best option on the table. Contrary to the dismay of a lot of hunters and what they may believe. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You take the good with the bad. We still have some great deer. We have some great hunting. Hopefully at some point in time, somebody will find a vaccine or a cure or something. I mean, even if it's 10, 15, 20 years from now, I know they're working on it. So let's just hope that happens.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And it's one of those things, like, to your point, when it's a low infection rate, it's easy for people to say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, it's been here, blah, blah, blah. But, like you said, up in some of those spots in Wisconsin where 40% or 50% of bucks are positive. What happens when, well, already I think a lot of people are very hesitant to eat that meat. What happens if someday in the next few years or 10 years or something, it comes to light that there has been a case that has transmitted to humans? Then then I think you have a lot of questions and concerns. And if you can't
Sure.
eat the meat of a deer you kill anymore where you hunt, what does that mean for the future of hunting?
Yeah, I mean, I know that. I mean, I just listened to you on Ranella's podcast here recently. I listened to him a lot, and I'm always interested in his talks about CWD. And I'm of the belief that I mean, should somebody realize that when they eat a CWD positive animal, there is a 1 in a billionth chance you're going to get sick? Sure, but honestly, I mean, not to be a Debbie Downer here, but any one of us have a better chance of getting in a car accident on our way to go hunting and get killed from that, or get struck by lightning even, than we do of contracting CWD from eating a deer that's positive.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to keep everything in perspective. Like, I wouldn't be hesitant to do it. It's the odds of it happening are virtually zero. As of right now, they are zero. It's never happened.
Yep.
Not to
Right.
say that it can't or won't. My bigger concern over, humans getting infected with it is more or less, what does the hunting industry look like in 10, 15, 20 years when you start seeing infection rates in adult males, that keep increasing, and as we all know, once a deer contracts CWD, it's fatal. They're going to die. And a lot of your younger bucks contract it, let's say a 1.5-year-old deer contracts it, and let's say he's dead by the time he's 2 or 3 years old. In a lot of cases, he's dying from hunters or natural causes or cars or whatever. But if they start dying from CWD and those deer aren't making it to 4, 5, 6 years old, let's face it. I mean, that's kind of what makes the hunting industry go round. We all love meat. We all love venison. That's kind of the core of why we hunt, right? But beyond that, we like the thrill of chasing big bucks. Big
Mm-hmm.
bucks makes hunting go round. And when those big bucks stop existing or exist in such a low number that people can't chase them anymore, what does that look like for the hunting industry? Does that mean guys start turning towards other hobbies, doing other things, which takes money out of the industry, which takes money out of conservation? I mean, there's this kind of whole snowball effect that, we may not see the ramifications of it for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But when all of our kids are our age, what's that landscape going to look like? I'm kind of thinking, bigger picture wise. Yeah, it sucks when the DNR shoots some deer and I don't see as many, but I still have the opportunity to go hunt. There's plenty of deer here. I could kill a deer every year, and not have to worry about needing the meat. But what's that going to look like in 30, 40 years from now?
Yeah. Yeah, I think to your point, there's a lot of questions still, and if things keep going the way they're going and we don't start finding solutions, or if we don't take this seriously, there are some concerning things that could be on the horizon. So I think even though we don't have any answers right now, I think it's just, let's not pretend this isn't an issue. Let's not put our heads in the sand and just try to pretend everything's okay. Let's actually be serious about it, continue to better understand it, and support those organizations or our state agencies that are trying to do their best to get their hands on this. I'm going to
Sure.
a symposium in Michigan next week. A CWD symposium is what they're calling it, where they're having experts from all across the country come in and discuss research and different best practices and all this kind of stuff. And I'll be really interested to hear what they have to share. So I'm glad to see that states like Michigan and others are trying to stay on top of it, I guess would be the best way to put it, and do the best they can. And I hope that continues, and that, like you said, Justin, hopefully a vaccine or something comes down the line here soon, so we don't have a future 20, 30 years from now that's got a lot of big question marks, like you said.
Yeah. And it'd be nice if a lot of hunters would do more to educate themselves about the disease, what it is, how it's transmitted. There's a lot of people out there that just, I don't know, there's literally people that think that, like, this doesn't even exist. Like, it's not even a real thing. It's made up. It's a government conspiracy, or it's being backed by the insurance companies, or all these just crazy conspiracy theories that, just simply aren't true. I think
that's not even the average Joe who thinks that. That's leaders in the industry that think that as well.
There are some
and that's
people,
bullshit.
Yeah, it is, Dan. I agree with you. I mean, if people would just take the time to do some research, educate themselves, and make an informed decision. And I guess to open that discussion up, I mean, that goes for all things in life. There's a lot of crap going on in the world right now, for better or for worse, with social media. There's a lot of people that kind of just fall for stupid headlines and what other stupid people are saying. I wish everybody would just kind of stop for a minute, use your own brain, do some research before you make an opinion, and then go spouting it off to everybody.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother tangent we don't have to get into. Let's talk about killing deer.
Yeah, let's talk about something good. I want to hear about, because you kind of intrigued me when you've been talking about your kind of suburban hunting situation there and these couple giant bucks. So what does your early season plan look like getting after one of these two big guys in this kind of scenario? Because we actually, I don't think, Dan, we've ever talked to anyone, but maybe one person who's really talked about hunting in that kind of suburban type area. So I'm curious about how you're approaching it, what your plans are this year, and what are like some of the tactics or thoughts that are on your mind as you start the season.
Right. Well, I think I'm really going to let you guys down here on this. I think you're looking for something that's not there, because I'll be completely frank, I don't have any right now, and for a couple different reasons. Number one, because we start October 1st, and I don't know about you guys, but I've never really had any good luck in the first half of October with mature bucks on their feet, at least where I'm at. Unless we get a really good cold snap, that first couple days of the season just doesn't seem to happen. Looks like we got a cold snap coming like tomorrow, which is about 4 or 5 days too early for this Sunday being the opener. So honestly, my plan is to not even really hunt either one of those two deer probably till starting in mid-October.
Okay.
My plan actually is to take my little guy, my 5-year-old, out with me to sit in a ground blind and try to shoot a doe these first 2 weekends. I'm going to use some of the warmer weather and the fact that a lot of the bigger bucks really aren't moving so much, or at least if they are, I don't know where they're at. Maybe it's because I haven't had the time or done the due diligence to try to figure that out. But my plan is to kind of just lay off my two better spots these first couple of weeks, and then potentially, when the wind and the weather is right, go in for some afternoon sits starting probably in mid-October for those deer. I'm not going to be hunting either one of them very much before about the 27th of October. I actually am going to be in Kansas from, I think, the 21st through the 25th. I have to be home for my son's first birthday on the 26th. And then after that, like the 27th through Halloween is really when I plan on getting after those two deer, when that pre-rut is really kicking in. So my first couple weeks here, I'm going to go out with a little guy. I got a ground blind set up at my lease, and I'm going to try to shoot a doe, honestly, with him in the blind with me. That's my goal for the first couple of weekends here.
Yeah, well, it makes sense given the scenario you're laying out there. But do you do anything during that time period that you're not actually hunting to still try to gather intel? I mean, do you have a trail camera situation going on, or anything else? I mean, what are you doing to gain intel at that point?
I mean, I'm a trail camera junkie. I mean, I probably have 25 cameras deployed right now between my various properties that I hunt. I don't check them very often this time of year. I'll check them usually when I go hunting. But I tell you what, the cellular trail cameras are fantastic. They text me pictures right to my phone, so I can keep an eye on what's going on that way. Fortunately, where the biggest buck is at, it's a property I've been hunting for a long, long time. I know what the deer do. I generally know where they move, kind of when they move, when that pre-rut starts heating up. All my stands have been set mostly in the same places for a few years now. They're all trimmed and ready to go. So now it's kind of just waiting for the right time to get in there and go after them. But yeah, definitely trail camera data is going to tell me a lot. And then I'll just watch the weather. I'm a firm believer in these cold fronts in early to mid-October, even through late October. If we can get a good cold front, because these spots are local, I'll just sneak out of work early in an afternoon and go hunt, and try to capitalize on those weather fronts.
Yeah.
So if your big boy doesn't show up, because you've hunted this property for a long time, if he doesn't show up on trail camera for in between a couple checks, are you worried at any point that this buck has maybe been shot or has disappeared, or your property well enough that he could still be there and is just on a different piece of the property?
I'd say, if I went 3-4 weeks without a picture, I'd probably get worried. But if I check cameras and then go back the next week and check them and don't have them, I wouldn't. That doesn't ever worry me. I didn't get pictures of that deer this summer until, mid-August, I want to say it was, before I got any summertime pictures of him in velvet. So, I was starting to get a little worried, thinking, where is he? But then he showed up, and he's been a regular on camera. He's on, I got one cellular camera on that farm on a scrape, and he's there every 3 or 4 nights now, pretty regularly during the middle of the night. So I wake up in the morning and I got a picture of him on my phone, kind of doing his weekly rounds. So, yeah, I'm not super concerned. I mean, there's guys that hunt around me on neighboring properties. I know most of them. If he get hit, probably has a better chance of getting hit by a car than he does killed by another hunter. Just where we're at, I've got a 4-lane, highway that borders probably a mile of the property that I'm on. So, I mean, that's like, 70, 75 miles an hour, cars and trucks and semis all day, all night. So he's probably got a better chance of getting smacked by a car out there than he does, killed by another hunter.
Now, what about the opposite? So what if in the early season that cell camera starts showing daylight pictures of him? Are you gonna scrap your plan and all of a sudden decide to move in there? Or are you staying out no matter what?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you start getting daylight pictures of a buck, you better get your ass in there and kill them. Because once they start doing that, that's when they're killable. Why wait? So yeah, if for some reason that happens, absolutely. Generally speaking, on this farm with the bucks of that age, and even with this buck, he usually doesn't start showing up daylight till the end of October. I think last year I had him like on the, I don't remember, 23rd, 24th, somewhere around there. First started showing up on scrapes during daylight. So that's kind of been my plan, is just wait till that, later part of October, and get in there and try to kill him then. But if it happens sooner, then great. I think there's a lot of guys out there that, and I know a few of them that I hunt with or I'm friends with that, they listen to all the podcasts, right? They read all the blogs, they watch all the YouTube videos, and there's so much information out there nowadays. It's like, early season tactics, find where the bucks bed and go in and get super close to their bedding area, or the bump them and dump them, and all these things that I just think like they work sometimes, but the percentage of times that those things work, especially for a novice hunter, is so low. I just feel like there's a lot of guys that just read something or hear something or see something and they just go out and do it. And man, I've always felt like you're kind of playing with fire if you get too aggressive too early in the year. I've learned as I get a little bit older to just relax a little bit, back it down, wait till the time's right, and go in and try to kill them then. Seem to have better luck doing that than I do getting super aggressive and trying to, sneak in. I got in this stand and I'm 50 yards from a bedded buck. Well, dude, I don't know about you guys, but that's a hard thing to do without spooking a deer, So I prefer to just wait till the time is right, when they're moving a little bit during the daylight, hit those scrapes. I really kind of key in on scrapes and field edges and maybe some food plots, where the does are going to be at during late October, and hope for the best.
So speaking of like scrapes, you mentioned this in relation to trail cameras too earlier. What is your trail camera kind of set up and plan in October? Do you have everything out already and you're just leaving it untouched until you start hunting more, or do you move things around? Sure. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, my summertime, I usually put all of my cameras on field edges, just because I don't know about where you guys are at, but where we're at here, our mosquitoes during the summer are god awful. They're horrendous. You can't even step foot in the woods during the summertime without just getting destroyed by mosquitoes. So I try to keep everything on field edges where it's easy to check, not a super far walk from the truck, or I can pretty much drive right to it during the summertime. And then usually right about the time when velvet comes off, I move the vast majority of my cameras to scrapes, just because I know that's where I'm going to get the most concentrated and best activity. And I feel like it's a good indicator of when the bucks really start moving during the daylight. So during the early part of the season, I'm not super religious about checking cameras. I'm an opportunistic camera checker. I'll check them on my way into or out of my stands if I happen to be going by one of them. But I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go circle through my whole property and check every camera one day, like in early October. Once we hit that 15th to the 20th, then I'll start trying to check them a little bit more regularly to see what bucks are showing up where, and really try to key in on when you start seeing that first daytime activity of your bigger bucks anyways, on those scrapes. I feel like that's just a great indicator of what's happening, and it kind of lets you know when you should be gearing up to get in there.
Mm-hmm. So that mid-October, mid to the later third of October, then if we're saying that you took kind of a couple weeks there to shoot does and stay out of your good spots, now if we move up to the 15th through the 20th or something in there, if we do get that cold front like you mentioned, or maybe you get a daylight picture that indicates, all right, maybe there's some daylight activity going, what are the kinds of setups that you're going to be in at that point? Is it scrapes like you just mentioned, or anything else like more detailed?
Man, I try to keep it simple, and I try to stick to the basic principles that I feel are pretty solid no matter where you go. Hunt bedding areas in the morning and food sources / scrapes in the evenings. I'm a pretty simple dude. So, I've got a couple morning setups where I feel like I can sneak into them without disturbing the destination food sources that are in or close to or on travel corridors back to bedding in October. In mid-October. And then evenings, I'm kind of an edge hunter. I don't like to push too far into the woods in the evenings. So, yeah, I key in on those scrapes, on those field edges, especially like around here. If I can find a field edge or something that's kind of hidden from view from a road or from a house, usually that's going to be the most active area during daylight. So I'll try to key in on those areas. Actually, the stand where I passed this buck last year is right on kind of a field edge where the deer don't really come out into the field too much, but they parallel the field edge right on the inside of the woods, kind of looking out into the field. They come out to this corner and they usually check a scrape and they do one of two things. They either wait till dark to go out and cross the field or they turn around, they head back in the woods and go somewhere else. So that's a really good spot, like an evening spot for me. And like I said, mornings, especially in mid-October, if you can get a cold front, something that's maybe going to keep those bucks on their feet a little bit later than they normally would be, and you could sneak into one of those bedding areas where you feel like you can truly get back in there before that deer's coming back to bed, and you can catch them back in there, then that's where I've traditionally had success in October. I've killed most of my October deer, or bucks, I should say, on morning hunts, which I know is contrary to what a lot of people are saying these days. It's kind of like the trendy thing to do right now is like, don't hunt mornings in October. I've killed deer on October 16th, 18th, 19th, and then we start getting the 28th, 29th, Halloween. Like I've killed deer on mornings all those days.
I knew I liked you.
But every one of them's coincided with a cold front. Every single one of them has coincided with a significant drop in temperature that I believe has kept those bucks, out and about, a little bit later, maybe checking scrapes, looking for does before they decide to go back to bed.
Yeah. Everything's circumstantial, right? It's all based on whatever the different conditions are. And man, I desperately try to stay trendy, but you're absolutely right. Sometimes there are circumstances where you need to break the traditional rules. I know Dan just likes to go plowing right through the food sources, straight into the bedding area every morning, and he just likes to get after it. But
let's face it, we all did that when we were younger.
It's true.
I remember being probably, I don't know if I was in high school or maybe just like right in college, 18, 19, somewhere in there. My dad used to drive me up to the top of this field on the property we hunted. It was a cut cornfield. He'd drive me all the way to the top of it. And I would walk across this cut cornfield. It was probably a 100-acre field. And I would walk right on the peak of it, like the flat spot, all the way across, probably a quarter mile or more across this cut cornfield. And then I'd get into my stand that was like 10 yards on the inside the edge of the field. And there would be deer running everywhere every morning. When I walked in that field, I could see them with my light, tails and eyeballs. And then I'd get in there and I'd get ready to hunt and I'd see like one deer that morning. And I'd come out and be like, man, I don't know what happened. There was deer everywhere when I walked in and then I didn't see anything. I guess I didn't know any better then until I learned to don't go pounding through the middle of the food source in the morning and you'll have a lot better luck.
Uh-huh. There's a few basic principles like that can make a big difference.
Yeah. Well, I think, not to toot our own horns here, but the really the advent and the popularity of the internet in general has really sped up the learning curve of today's hunter. You can listen to a podcast or read a blog or watch a YouTube video and you can pick up information that used to take you years to learn through trial and error. I can't tell you how many years I walked through that stupid cornfield, before one day something finally clicked. But now as a younger hunter, you can the wealth of information that's available out there from experienced people with real world knowledge, is just so much greater. Your learning curve is so much shorter. nowadays, to become, a halfway decent deer hunter. You still can't replace experience, but you can learn a lot of the basics a lot quicker than I went through with my trial and error as a young man. I used to hunt from the ground a lot. I used to do a lot of quote unquote still hunting.
Ooh.
When I thought that was a thing because, I read a magazine article about it.
Uh-huh.
And so my buddy Mike and I, when we were in high school, we'd go out hunting after school. We had all of our clothes in the backseat of our car. We'd get out there to our hunting spot. We'd get dressed, spray down with our earth scented everything. And we had wafers hanging all over us. and we'd walk out in the woods and we'd clear a spot next to a tree. We didn't hunt out of tree stands. Kick out some leaves next to a tree and sit there and wait, right? And I'd wait, and about a half hour before dark, when it was getting to be prime time, we were like, okay, now it's time to go do a little bit of still hunting. So we'd get up and start walking around the woods and try to sneak from tree to tree during that last prime time to see if we could catch a deer on their feet. We had no rhyme or reason as to where we were going or why we were going there or anything. And it's a wonder we ever managed to happen into a deer that let us shoot it,
That's awesome.
But it's funny looking back on those old days now.
Oh, yeah. I think we all have experiences or stories like that. All right, well, I think this is a good place for us to take a quick break to thank our partners at Whitetail Properties and to check in with them for our weekly dose of whitetail wisdom. And here to help us do that is Wired to Hunt's very own Barry White impersonator, our producer, Spencer Newharth.
This week with Whitetail Properties, we are joined by Justin Mason, a land specialist out of Kentucky. And Justin is going to be telling us about what government programs are available to help landowners generate additional income on their property.
So I think, the number one thing to remember is on your hunting property, as long as you own it, there are programs that you could be eligible for. I kind of break them down into a couple of categories. There are one-time enrollment programs, like the Wetland Reserve Program. You enroll the program one time, it pays up front, and then that program is established for a lot of times the lifetime of the property. The most common would be those annual payment programs like CRP. It's short for Conservation Reserve Program. And really what CRP does is it pays the landowner not to farm the property. So it goes into either some sort of annual program with either trees, you either plant some trees, or a lot of it is kind of a cool season grass, which when you're hunting those Midwest states and you see those CRP fields, that's what a lot of those are enrolled in. So those are probably the most common types of government programs.
If you'd like to learn more and to see the properties that Justin currently has listed for sale, visit whitetailproperties.com/Mason. That's MASON.
Oh, gosh. How do things for you start changing once we get into those rut phases? There's the traditional things that we always talk about. Do you feel like you're a traditionalist when it comes to the rut? Hunting all day, hunting near bedding areas or a pinch point, just put in the time, or do you do anything different?
Again, I go back to, I just like to keep it simple. I like to hunt pinch points and funnels during the rut when the time's right, and most specifically when the weather's right. I like to hunt all day when I can. A lot of my all-day sits I'll do, like if I'm on a single piece of property, I might do like a bedding area in the morning, and hunt that through like midday. And then, sometimes you just need to break up the monotony. So I'll get down and maybe walk a couple hundred yards to another stand on that same property and climb up for the rest of the afternoon sit. It's hard sitting in a little tree stand all damn day. I do it and I've done it, but I really prefer to get down, stretch my legs, eat a sandwich real quick, maybe spend 20 minutes in between one stand and the next stand, and then maybe hunt a food source in the evening, something along those lines I'll do a lot. But again, I try to be just a traditionalist, stick with the stuff that's worked for centuries. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Bucks are going to be moving in between bedding areas, get in those funnels and those pinch points, hit the food sources in the evenings because they're looking for does. And then I think maybe the one thing that I do that's more of a modern technique is, I do move stands a lot during the season. We use all lone wolf stuff, which I think is, great, super portable. There's a lot of good options on the market, probably more than there's ever been for being able to do these run and gun type setups. So, I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that's like, well, I've had this stand here forever and it's always produced, but I hunt it twice and I see the deer using the other side of the field more than they have in the past. I'm yanking that stand or I'm grabbing a new one and I'm going over there and I'm going to hang and hunt. So I'm a really big advocate of hunting fresh sign, doing some in-season scouting. That's probably the one thing I do a lot of that I would consider more of a newer type of technique.
So when you're doing that in-season scouting, is that just scouting that's happening while you're already walking from point A to point B? Or do you actively say, all right, I'm going to go explore a new spot or check out this region specifically because you want to scout it?
A little bit of both. I'd say the majority of it is just way in and way out type stuff where it's like, oh, hey, man, it looks like they're really using this. I try to park pretty far from where I'm hunting. The last year I got kind of lazy with what I was doing, and I was driving entirely too far into my property and parking, and I think I screwed up some of my hunts. But in the past, I try to park pretty far away and take the long way in just to avoid deer where I can. So you get a lot of scouting done that way. And then a lot of times what I'll do, honestly, like a good example is, I'll be out at my lease. It's 2 hours away and I'll hunt, let's say, a Sunday morning. And I know I'm not coming back to that property till maybe next weekend. I'm going to go home that afternoon and I'm going to hunt Sunday night local to home so I can get home. So I'll do my morning hunt and then I'll be like, you know what, I'm not coming back here for a week. I'll go walk that whole piece of property because I don't care if I spook something, if I bump something. I need to know what's going on in there if I want to try to, kill an animal. Obviously, if I'm seeing a lot of deer and I'm confident in where I'm at, I might not do that. But if it's like, man, I haven't really been seeing the deer that I'm used to, let's go check cameras. Let's go walk this whole thing and see what the hell's going on out there. Because patterns do change from year to year. Food sources change every year. The neighbors are doing different things. Someone put a fence up. Someone took the fence down. Whatever the case may be. I think having that knowledge of what's happening at that specific time and being able to move in on it quickly prevents it or offers a huge advantage for today's kind of modern hunter.
Now, with that said, you say patterns change. Mark and I on the show talk a lot about annual patterns. Let's say a buck shows up, it isn't on your property at all until X date every year. Are you a fan of, or do you believe in annual patterns? And do you have an example of maybe seeing that on any of the properties that you hunt?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the annual patterns are a pain in the ass for the most part because you get these deer that show up in the summer in velvet, and then they leave. So I've got one of those. The deer's, 7 years old probably now. He shows up every year, usually in August. When our acorns drop pretty early where we're at here. We got a lot of white oak acorns on some of the farms I hunt. So when those white oaks start dropping into the alfalfa fields, this buck shows up every year in August. Stays for a couple weeks, usually right till about when the velvet's going to come off, and then he disappears and never to be seen again, never found a shed, nothing. Likewise, I usually have 1 or 2 bucks that show up every year in the fall that weren't there during the summer that are just kind of relocating for whatever reason. So, yeah, I definitely believe in those annual patterns. The bitch about those annual patterns, though, is, as predictable as they are, they're usually based on like a per deer thing. Like each deer's got its thing it does. Mm-hmm. Some deer move, some deer don't. I have some deer that are homebodies and they're there all year long. Some deer aren't. So it's really hard to base anything on that in a lot of cases if you don't know the deer's even alive. I did that last year. The farm where I passed the big deer, we didn't have any bucks on camera older than 3 years old. And this is like a, 600 or 800 acre farm, right? There was nothing older than 3 years old. The year prior to that, all of our deer got either killed by neighbors or hit by cars. We lost like 3 or 4 really good bucks to cars that year. So last year, I didn't have any deer older than 3 years old, but I knew that traditionally something would show up in November from across the road somewhere, and I'd have a good buck that would come through the property at some point, usually later in November, say after the 15th. So I hunted that farm pretty hard, hoping that was going to happen, and it never did. Unfortunately, I never got a single trail camera picture, had a sighting of any deer on that farm older than 3 years old. So I was hunting something that I was hoping was going to happen, versus what I should have been doing was going to my other spot where I know I had 2 bona fide 4-year-olds that I would have loved to shoot. But for some reason I was hung up on hunting this other farm thinking something's going to show up. The other farm was a little easier to hunt, better access. I liked my stand placement better. So I was like, I'm just going to keep going here. Something's got to show up eventually. And it just never happened. And then I let the other farm with 2 shooters just sit for some stupid reason. Wasn't a good choice.
Happens to the best of us, that's for sure. Talking about tree stand placement, if I want to rewind just a little bit to something you were saying earlier about the fact that you run and gun a lot. One of the things that I'm always challenged with is how many observations or how many data points do I need to see before I make that change? So let's say I'm sitting on one side of a clearing and I see a buck on the opposite side. Do I need to see him once and then I should move, or should I see him do the same thing twice and make the move? Or what's the number for you, or when are you willing to say, all right, that threshold's been passed, it's time to pull and reset up?
Man, that's a hard one, right? Because that's the I saw him over there once, so I moved my stand over there, and then as soon as I got there, he was back over where my other stand was at.
Exactly.
So I usually like to say more than once. For the most part, I think a lot of it depends on the time of year. And for me, it's not so much always sightings as it is sign, because I'm only in the woods every so often. I mean, I hunt weekends like everybody else. I sneak in a few evening hunts during the week, in late October, and that's really about it. So I don't get as many observational type sits as I'd like to have, as most of us would like to have. So I'm relying on trail camera data in a lot of cases, and I'm relying on sign. I mean, if I'm just seeing all of a sudden a bunch of fresh scrapes open up, or fresh rubs or tracks, or just whatever the case may be, and I'm like, man, something's going on over here, I need to get in here, I'll move in on something without ever having seen a deer there before. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I won't yank what I believe to be a good stand and move it based simply on one sighting of a deer, across a field where I don't have a stand. I still try to believe that most of my scouting is accurate and my stands are in good spots until I've really been proven otherwise. I hunt a stand twice and I don't have a deer in bow range, and I feel like it's the right conditions, it's the right time of year, and nothing's happening. I may abandon that stand for the rest of the year. I may yank it and pull it somewhere else. I'm not one to usually stick a stand out for a long period of time if it's not proving itself.
Do you have a set routine? I mean, for me, I'll go into a spot that I feel is good, whether I got a trail camera picture or sign, and let's say I'll hunt an evening, a morning, and an evening, or a morning, an evening, and a morning, and then give it 3 hunts and then go. Do you have a set thing that you like to do, or is it all kind of a shoot from the hip thing?
I think it's a shoot from the hip kind of thing. It is based on, again, time of year, wind direction, weather fronts, it all kind of plays a factor into where I want to go and what I believe the deer are going to be doing. So yeah, I mean, I try anyways, again, because I'm fortunate to have a couple spots to hunt. I try not to pound them too hard. I try to bounce between them. There aren't a lot of days where I hunt the same farm morning and afternoon, here locally anyways. I try to alternate between the two of them. Obviously, when I'm driving 2 hours and I'm maybe staying overnight, I'm going to hunt that same farm for a day and a half, and then come home. But yeah, I just really try to bounce around a lot. Last year I tried, because I was really short on time last year, and the new baby and work and everything else, I had one stand that I just knew was going to be a good stand. It was near a field edge, had a big scrape right in front of it, tons of fresh sun around it. And I hunted that stand every time I had the right wind and weather conditions. I went to it 4 or 5 evenings, over a 10-day period, something like that. And I never killed a buck from it. The last day I hunted it, I actually had to hunt a morning instead of an afternoon. And I went there that morning and hunted that stand, didn't see a single deer, and I left. Came back a couple days later, checked the trail camera that was on that scrape, and the big, he was a 12-pointer that I was after, was on that scrape that afternoon that I had been there, and so it was my plan would have worked. If I would have just stayed the course and kept hunting that one stand in evenings, I knew it was only a matter of time before a buck showed in daylight. It was October 28th, 29th. It did work. I just wasn't there, unfortunately. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I wish I did. I feel like there's a lot of guys that pretend like they know what the answer is, but in my opinion, there's guys that are very good at hunting, but so much of it just comes down to the amount of time you have to spend in the woods and the quality of the property that you have. If you have a good property and you halfway know what you're doing, you spend enough time out there, you're probably going to get a shot at something. I know a lot of guys that have killed a lot of deer over the years that aren't the best hunters in the world. They just got a lot of time to do it.
Yeah. So when you're limited on time like that because of work or, you guys that have all these kids, is there anything you've learned that's helped you make the most of that other than what we've already talked about?
Honestly, man, I try to, as I call it, kind of pick my battles, right? Both with the deer and with my wife, because I know that I'm only going to have so much time to hunt. So it's like, the wife wants to go to the pumpkin patch this weekend, and it's October 17th, but it's warm and it's 80 some degrees today with a 15 mile an hour south wind. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take an afternoon off and I just won't hunt this afternoon. I'll make the wife happy. I'll make the kids happy. We'll go get pumpkins and do whatever we're going to do, because the next time a cold front comes in, I'm going to cash in one of my chips and say, I'm going hunting tonight.
Yeah.
I think just hunting when the time is right. Now, not everybody's afforded that opportunity. If you're a guy that's planning an out-of-state trip or you're going on an outfitted hunt with somebody and you're saying, hey, November 1st through the 5th, I'm going to be in Missouri with such and such outfitter, like, you just take what you can get. You don't have that luxury. So not everybody can do that. Fortunately, I'm in a position where I get that flexibility from time to time. And I think that's made the world of difference in some of my hunting. I've killed a lot of my deer in the last couple years on those Fridays or Mondays or Wednesday afternoon type of sits.
Right, with those correct conditions. And you talked about the cold fronts that you like to key in on. Do you pay attention to any other types of factors that get tossed around there, like the moon or pressure or anything like that? Does that factor in at all for you?
Man, I used to. Believe me, I've listened to Mark Drury on your podcast 20 times,
Yeah.
as have the rest of the guys on our team, and tried to dissect it and everything. But the fact of the matter is, it boils down to I only got so much time.
Right.
So it's like I used to worry about the wind. Like I used to plan my weekend trips to my lease based on the moon. And I've been proven wrong so many times. I'd be like, oh, yeah, it's a full moon. They're not going to be moving today. I'm just going to stay at home. And then it's like, everybody I know is killing deer somewhere. And it's like, well, I thought they weren't supposed to be moving today. Well, it turns out it was, a weather front and high pressure. I think personally weather trumps everything else when it comes to deer movement, specifically cold fronts, which are generally associated with, the pressure is usually going to drop before the cold front. And then once it passes through, most of the time you get those, bluebird skies, a heavy frost, hopefully a light wind like that next morning after that front's gone. Those seem to be the best times for me to kill deer. Like if I see that perfect storm of like, this is coming, I really try to just be like, I need to be in the woods on that day.
Yeah. I think I'm right there with you. What do you think about this, Justin? What do you think what's your greatest weakness as a hunter? Or what do you struggle with the most? If you had to point at something.
Executing the shot at the moment of truth.
Yeah.
Probably. I've traditionally been pretty good about putting myself in positions to get shots at animals. I've botched more of them than I care to admit. So that's probably still the biggest area that I struggle with. And it's gotten a lot better with age and experience. And I think just maybe lessening the pressure on myself. I really don't feel pressure anymore when I shoot a deer. I'm pretty confident in my ability as an archer just in general. But that's probably still the biggest area that I have to work on. I can get close to them. I can get them in there. Getting them killed is another story.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff have you done to try to improve there so far? Have you changed at all how you're practicing or anything with your archer, or has it just been get more experience shooting more deer?
Yeah, more experience shooting more deer, and just shooting my bow a lot more. Just because I can pick up my bow and hit a bullseye on that first shot, every time, that's not necessarily enough. some of the guys that film for our show are people that I know are police officers that are involved in, like, whether it be SWAT teams or special response teams and stuff. And they preach a lot of, just constant training and that muscle memory. Because when you get put into a situation that's kind of high stress, as you guys know, I mean, think about some of the deer that you've shot over the years, specifically mostly on bucks, right? Sometimes you don't even remember the whole shot process.
Yeah.
Like your brain just kind of blanks, in the process of drawing and aiming and shooting and everything. And you're like, I know I did it and I know I hit the deer, but what the hell just happened?
Right.
Right. So that's like where that muscle memory, everybody is, kind of preached to me, like, you just have to shoot a lot. Like, your brain needs to know exactly what it's doing. So it's just shooting, whether it's every day, every other day, 10, 15 arrows. I set up a bag target in my basement and I try to shoot a lot, just so that, when that high stress situation comes, your brain's going to, I guess, revert back to its, base memory or whatever of what you're doing. And I want that to be a good one and not a bad one. So that's probably the biggest thing. And then I just think, age, I guess it's like anything in life, right? You got some sports figures, because this is the analogy I try to make to people. You got some sports figures that are just clutch, right? That when it's the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, winning runs at third base, there's certain guys that aren't fazed by that and can just, it's like ice in their veins. They're just clutch. And then there's some guys that aren't. I'm not a clutch guy. I've never been a clutch guy, but I'm working really on trying to become more of that person.
Yeah.
I know some guys that are just stone cold killers, man. They just don't get rattled. Their heart rate doesn't seem to go up at all. And, for me, I'm totally the opposite. There's times when I've just totally fallen apart and let a shot go, and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
So that's the part for me that I probably still work on the most.
Yeah. Dan, how's your archery practice going? We talked like a month and a half ago about some of the things you were doing this year. What's your progress there?
Yeah, I made the mistake of trying to teach myself back tension.
Oh boy.
Too close to the season, I think. So I was
with an actual back tension release, like with a hinge, or are you just shooting a thumb trigger?
No.
Oh,
the full blown back tension. So I started off and it was a shock to my system. And I think that shock was too close to the hunting season. And I ended up putting it down. And it's something that I'm going to pick back up as soon as the season's over for the next year. I just felt that I needed more time with the schedule that I had. I needed more time to, to properly train myself on how to use it and seek advice.
So why
from
did you do that? Were you having target panic issues that you were trying to resolve?
It's one of those things, just like we all talk about. You're online, you read up, like, hey, I've had problems with, I got a social media site too. And I ask the people that are on there, I've suffered from target panic in the past. I'm that guy who, depending on the scenario, blacks straight out and is just like, what just happened? You know what I mean? And I want to prevent that from happening. So that's why I decided to go to the back tension. It's just that I think it was too close to the season. So I ended up going back to my wrist trigger release. I ended up having to change my sights again. So I basically had to redo my whole setup again, which was, that's okay. But I think I'm going to stick with that and just, I don't know, go with a slap to the face or when that moment comes, last year, I just kind of was like, I closed my eyes after I saw the buck and I was just like, dude, just relax, man. Just relax. And yeah, I still got fired up, but every time I say this all the time, but when you're around the caliber of bucks that get you excited, and that doesn't necessarily mean giant 200-inch bucks, right? We're talking about, depending on where you're at, if it's the first 120 you've ever seen, it's going to be a shock to your system. And it's just men's nature nowadays to get fired up on the rack. And I had to tell myself that means nothing. The most important thing is to get an accurate shot. And I just try to calm myself down through like like talking to myself.
Sure. Yeah, believe me, Dan, I'm 100% with you. Is there any reason you didn't try just a standard thumb trigger release instead of going all in on the hinge?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with recommendations from others. I mean, the people that I've talked to are just like, dude, skip the thumb release and go straight to the back tension release. It's gonna do you worlds better, as far as accuracy. And I think a lot of it has to do with the bow setup too. I mean, if you change your release, you're obviously going to have to change potentially your draw. And I think I might have had to do some of that as well. So I just went back with what I was comfortable with. And then once this season's over, then it's just time to start from scratch again.
Yeah. See, I switched to a thumb release, I don't know, 4 years ago or so now, because I was having a lot of target panic issues with my wrist strap and my index finger release. And it's helped significantly. It hasn't eliminated it entirely. It still rears its ugly little head from time to time. So, I mentioned I shoot in my basement a lot. I work a lot on kind of just blank bailing, where you close your eyes and shoot into the target and focus more on, your muscles and your release and your form and everything than worrying about where the arrow's hitting, which has helped a lot. And when I do there's every once in a while I catch myself kind of trying to punch the trigger even on the thumb release, but it's a lot harder to do. So like I'll get that little jolt almost, but the release doesn't go off.
Right.
And then I'm able to kind of set myself and be like, okay, relax, breathe, pull through the shot. And I feel like I've become a better archer. Part of the reason I switched as well is with us filming all of our hunts, we do a ton of self-filming. And I felt like it was easier for me to have my release already clipped onto the bow, because I'm kind of holding my bow in the left hand, camera in the right hand, and when I let go of that camera, all I have to do is grab the release and draw and shoot versus trying to hook up at the moment of truth. And Dan, I know you've filmed before, so I mean, adding the camera into the mix definitely adds like a whole nother level of stress, which just
absolutely
compounds that like blackout thing that happens. So yeah, I mean, going to a thumb trigger was huge for me. I'm not sure I could ever go back, but I gave myself, 6 months before hunting season. I switched in the spring because believe me, dude, I launched a couple arrows. They probably still haven't landed, with that thumb trigger when I first started using it. So it's definitely a big learning curve.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've done a similar switch, and we talked about it a few weeks ago too. But I haven't switched to a thumb or hinge yet. I'm still using a index finger release, but it's a much better one than I used to use with a really hard trigger break. But I'm switching to like a back tension type process, a shot sequence. So I'm locking that finger on the trigger right when I draw back. So I used to draw back, anchor, get the pin on him, and then like right when I was about to shoot, then I'd put my finger on the release, and yeah, I had those similar types of punching type things that I didn't like. I don't know if it was like admitting it to myself or recognizing that was like target panic, but I've kind of come to terms with that. So yeah, I switched to this new sequence, and I kind of switched to it pretty late, but I'm feeling really good about it so far, and it has definitely, like, I can 100% tell that it has improved what I'm doing and like significantly limiting those urges to punch the trigger in some form or fashion. Like you said, Justin, every once in a while, every rare occasion, I'll get that little jolt where like the mind wants to do that, but because I don't pull the trigger with my finger anymore, it doesn't happen. So now I'm locked on there, and I have like a controlled process, and I just have to go through step 1, step 2, and then step 3 triggers in my brain to start pulling with my back. And now that happens, and I really am finally achieving a surprise release, and I'm like, oh, so that's what it's supposed to feel like. It really does like, surprise me, and that's kind of cool. Yeah, it works.
It actually works.
So that's kind of cool. Now I haven't, shot at anything in the field yet, so that's going to be the next big test, and we'll see how that goes. But fingers crossed.
Did I just see that did you just shoot a caribou? Is that what you went and shot?
I did shoot a caribou.
Were you caribou hunting?
Yes.
And was that with a gun?
That was a gun hunt. Yep.
How was it? How was the hunt? Was it awesome?
The hunt was insane. It was really cool.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, man.
I'm a little jealous, man.
Alaska was unreal.
How was the meat?
Delicious.
Oh,
absolutely delicious. So the two coolest ways I've eaten caribou so far, I don't even know if I talked about this on when we did our caribou podcast, Dan, but one way we did it is one of our nights while we were out there, we did an Asian hot pot. So we had this big pot of broth with all these different Asian spices and carrots and onions and Szechuan peppercorns and stuff in there. So we bring that pot to a boil. And then we sliced up caribou heart and caribou backstrap in really, really thin little strips. And then with little wooden skewers, we'd stick a slice of meat on the end of the wooden stick, and we'd dip it into that boiling pot of broth for just like 15, 20 seconds, just enough to give it a little sear. Then you take that out and dip it in this kind of soy sauce type mixture. Eat that with your fingers, and that was absolutely
It sounds like fondue.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right?
It was like meat fondue, yep.
Yeah, that's freaking cool.
That was incredible. And then another thing we did is Steve cut the eyeballs out of my caribou and then cut the fat, the white fatty stuff from the back of the eyeball and made us try eating that. And I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't say that was delicious. But he was right.
One of those things where it's like, hey, let's trick the rookie.
Oh, well.
Or it was like, hey, the natives used to do this, and it was some special.
It was that kind of thing.
Who knows? It's an aphrodisiac.
Yeah. So we all did it, and it really did taste like he said it would. It did taste like pizza dough. But it was a little gross thinking about the fact that I was eating eyeball fat from a caribou that I just shot. But it's a story to tell, I guess, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, how many people can tell that story, right?
Not
Life
too many.
is a series of cool stories.
Yep.
And that's about as cool as they get. My new favorite way to cook venison is my sous vide cooker, which is the coolest thing ever. If anybody hasn't heard of it, have you guys heard of it or know what it is?
I've heard of it, but I've never done it.
So sous vide, I forgot what it stands for. Obviously, it's some foreign thing, but essentially, it's you take your meat. Like for me personally, when I eat venison, I like to brine it for at least a few hours, if not overnight. I feel like it, gets whatever quote unquote gamey flavor it may have out of the meat, makes it a little bit tender. More tender. So for people that don't eat venison a lot, like it makes it, I guess, maybe a little more palatable for them. So I usually brine it, and then I take like a backstrap, or like let's say a quarter of a backstrap, and vacuum seal it. You can either put seasonings in the vacuum sealer or marinate. It's up to you, but I usually vacuum seal it with just some salt and pepper. In the sous vide cooker, essentially, you take a pot of water that's room temperature, you put the cooker in it, and you set the temperature on the cooker. So I cook my venison to about 130 degrees, which is about medium rare. And then you take this meat that's in this vacuum sealed bag and you put it in the water bath, essentially. And then the cooker, all it's doing is it's heating the water up and circulating the water. So the heat from the water is actually cooking the meat, right? And the cool thing about sous vide, as you guys know, with cooking venison, it's really easy to overcook, right? And if you overcook venison, it's awful. Right. Yep. So with the sous vide, it's typically when you cook venison, let's say you're going to throw a backstrap or a steak on the grill or on the skillet or whatever, you got a 500-degree grill, you throw it on there, like you have to pull it off at the exact time when it hits that temperature that you want in order to get the doneness that you want. Well, with sous vide, basically I say I want it to 130 degrees, which is medium rare, and I can leave that thing in there for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Doesn't really matter how long I leave it in there. You don't want to leave it in there for days, but I can throw it on there at 1 p.m, and when I finally get hungry at 5:30 or whatever, I can pull that meat out of the water bath. Keep in mind the meat's never actually touched the water because it's in a bag, and it's perfectly cooked all the way through from end to end. So there's no it's more done on the outside and less done in the middle. Like the whole piece of meat is evenly cooked. And then what I do is I pull it out, I season it with maybe some more salt and pepper, some garlic salt, and I either throw it on the grill for about a minute per side, or like in a cast iron skillet, just to get that sear on the outside of it that we're all looking for. And then it's ready to eat. And it is the greatest meat ever. You could do it with steaks, beef steaks. You could cook chicken, pork, everything, but it's all perfectly done every time. Like you don't need to be a chef to get great food out of this thing. And it's super easy cleanup because basically, I mean, your water bath, like I bought a plastic tub thing that it goes in. Like you just dump the water out of that and then throw away the vacuum seal bag and that's it. and there's really no cleanup to it, and it's super, super simple. I'd recommend anybody out there that loves eating venison to pick up one of these machines and try it. They're freaking awesome.
And it's spelled SOUSVIDE. Is that right?
Correct. Yep, that's correct.
All right.
Yeah, I got mine on Amazon like everything else I buy.
Yep, the retail giant.
Yeah,
Man, that sounds pretty cool though.
Yeah, it's great, dude. I've been emptying the freezer out in preparation for the season, so I've been cooking a ton of venison here lately, and I've been using that thing for all of it. And it works phenomenal. Wow. And Todd luckily shot an elk last night, so I was texting him this morning. I'm like, make sure you bring every square inch of meat back here because I'm stealing a fair amount of it.
I do miss my elk, having some elk meat in the freezer. I've got a little bit left from the cow that my buddy shot when we were out there last September, but that's dwindling quickly. So
yeah, it's great, man. I can bring that cooker here to the office where we don't really have anything to cook with. We got a little grill, but I can, throw meat in that thing when I get here in the morning, and at lunchtime it's ready to eat. Throw it on the grill and let all the guys here at the office. We got 8 or 10 people here building websites and doing IT work and whatnot, and I can expose all of them because none of them hunt. Todd and I are the only 2 hunters here, so they get their venison fix. And like a lot of people, they're like, "Well, I've had venison before." My cousin cooked some up one time, and it was really pretty shitty. Right. I didn't like it, So then I'm like, all right, let me cook it for you the right way. And then they all eat it. And they're like, "God, this is phenomenal. You got any more?" Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Venison is one of those ultimate ways to open people's eyes to hunting. I think if they eat a good meal and they understand how it came to be, that is just like the ultimate olive branch to what we do and why we do it, I think. So
sure,
cooking it well is so important.
Yep.
Well, we're running out of time here, so I guess I want to ask you one more question. I don't know, Dan, if you've got anything you want to jump in with here, but I'll ask you the converse of what I threw at you a little bit ago. I asked you what you struggle with the most. Now I want to know, what do you think is your best attribute as a hunter?
That's a good one. I guess maybe just the flip side of what my worst thing as a hunter is. I've always, not always, but over the last 10 years or so, I've somehow found a knack for putting myself in the situation to get close to a deer in daylight hours and give myself an opportunity to shoot it, whether that's walking onto a brand new piece of property and scouting and hanging stands for the very first time, or a property that I've hunted for a long time. There aren't many years that I go where I don't have, deer within shooting range, good bucks, whether I choose to pass that deer or I botch the shot or I kill the animal. Like, I feel like I'm pretty darn good at that. I don't know if some of it's just luck, but I just, something about it. I mean, that's the thrill of the chase for me is as a bow hunter, being able to get in there and get close to them. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty good hunter from that regard. I just need to get better at closing the deal when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, I hear you. That chess match for me too. That's what I enjoy the most, is figuring out those little moves to make, when to be in the right place at the right time, and how to get all that to come together. There's nothing better as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. A few years back, I mean, we're going back almost 10 years now. I don't know if you guys remember, there was this thing called the Campbell Outdoor Challenge. Do you guys remember that by any chance?
I remember that, yep.
They had a TV show, and essentially it was like a competition, right? So we did that 2 years in a row. And basically it was in Southern Illinois. You show up, and they would give you a piece of property to hunt. This was an outfitter, and they would give you a map. And I mean, this was late October. And they'd say, here's your piece of property. It's 150 acres. Go have fun. And you were thrown into a piece of property that you never hunted before, you've never stepped foot on. All you've got is a map. You got to go out, scout, hang stands, and you got 4 or 5 days to hunt. And we were very, very fortunate that the 2 years we did it, first year it was me and actually a woman named Christine that used to do some work with us. Her and I went. We won it that year. I shot a good buck. And then the following year, we went back kind of to quote unquote defend our title, so to speak. My buddy Mike came with me, and we won it that year. Mike shot a really nice buck on the first morning that year. So I think that was kind of the turning point for me, and like my style of hunting with the run and gun, a scout during the season, be able to figure out the sign, where the deer are at. Like, I really enjoyed that. it was a blast. I mean, there's just something about walking onto a piece of property for the first time and trying to figure it out that's intriguing as a bow hunter, which is really kind of, 10 years or almost 10 years later now, fast forward, like my trips to Kansas this fall are all going to be public land. We went in the spring and we scouted a little bit and did some turkey hunting, but we have no idea what we're really walking into. But that's the intrigue. Like, I don't know what deer are there. I have no cameras. I have no history. I have nothing. Walking onto a piece of property, October 21st, scouting, hanging stands, and trying to kill deer. So I'm really, really excited to go down there this year. I feel like that type of situation maybe is a really good quote-unquote test of your hunting abilities. Sometimes we get complacent on some of these properties we've hunted forever, and we know what the deer are going to do and where they're going to do it and when they're going to do it. So it's kind of like, yeah, that spot over there is pretty good. I'm going to go there now and shoot a deer. Something about this new property, hang, hunt, scout, has really got me intrigued for this fall. So I'm hoping to have some success down there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Learning those new places, that is the ultimate challenge and test, I think, as a hunter. So I keep on trying to put myself in new positions too, because I think not only does it test you, but whether you succeed or not in filling that tag, you learn stuff that makes you a better hunter no matter what. So I think there really is something to be said about putting yourself in new positions and figuring it out as you go. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Dan, do you have final thoughts or any final questions for Justin?
I think we need to collaborate on a book, Hunting with Kids or something like that. I think that would be because I don't know about you, but I get like a lot of questions thrown my way about, hey man, how do you juggle time? How do you balance time? And me and you are in the same boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I tell you what, I mean, I try to spend as much time with my kids as I can,
right.
Especially during the off season. I mean, we're constantly doing something, whether we're going swimming or going to the park or we're taking them to the zoo or whatever. Like because I know, I mean, for as bad as it sounds, a lot of us, we hunt. I mean, we only have so much time to hunt during the fall, and we do prioritize that pretty high. So I try to, do as much with my kids as I humanly can, without killing myself, since there's so many of them. But, but yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, and you got to have a wife that's going to be at least semi-understanding. I know we all like to joke that, they get pissed at us when we're gone hunting and whatever, and they do from time to time. So, I mean, it's just smart to realize that, your marriage, your kids, your family, there are things that are more important than hunting, as much as we like to joke about
Absolutely.
Hunting kind of being the most important thing. So it's just realizing, where to draw that line, realizing when your wife is like to that breaking point and it's like, you know what, I don't really need to hunt tonight. Like I want to, like every bone in my body wants to go hunting right now. But the smart thing to do is to just stay home, whatever, take the kids trick-or-treating, do whatever, and just cool your jets, because I can go hunt tomorrow. That's probably been the biggest learning curve for me, is just getting adjusted to that. I can go do whatever I want whenever I want, because that's not reality anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I always though think of that song, old Brad Paisley, where he's talking about his girlfriend or his wife, I can't remember which it was giving him the ultimatum, said that if he goes bass fishing one more time, she's hitting the road, she's out the door, and then that chorus kicks in. He's just like, well, I'm gonna miss her.
Yeah.
Gotta get in the woods.
That was before kids.
Yeah, that was pre kids for Brad.
Child support's way too much money to consider doing that.
It is a financial issue. You're right. No, you guys are absolutely right, and I know I'm gonna be experiencing these new things when I bring the kids into play too. So I'm sure I'll be bugging you guys for advice as we go along. But Justin, thanks for joining us. And for people that want to see what you've got going on with bowhunting.com, I'd love to hear about where they can find stuff online with all your different deals. Sure. And then tell us a little bit about Busted Rack, too.
Yeah, sure. Well, for what we're doing at bowhunting.com, pretty simple, right? Bowhunting.com. For our show, if you go to bowhuntorDie.com, we'll bring you to our show page. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Roku, all that stuff. As far as Busted Rack goes, my buddy Mike and I decided for some crazy idea we were going to start our own business a few months back. I'm not sure why we decided to do this, but we started a t-shirt business, just kind of making some what we think are kind of cheeky humor, funny hunting related t-shirts. So yeah, I mean, if you guys want to check that out, it's bustedrack.com. I think we've got some funny stuff. Not everybody shares my same sense of humor. But yeah, I think we got some fun stuff going on over there. I really like the "I've killed more deer than CWD" shirt. It's really fitting for here in Illinois and Wisconsin where we're at. That's kind of my personal favorite shirt. After some of Todd's shooting here early this season, I don't know what he's got going on. I'm gonna have to get him the Texas Heart Shot T-shirt because he needs a little bit of help when he gets home, a little bit of archery coaching. I think when he gets back.
He's had a little bit of a rough spell with pulling those shots, huh?
Yeah, I think it's shooting from the ground. Turkeys, antelope, and now elk, he's made less than desirable shots. You put him in a tree with a whitetail in front of him, he's money every time. So, I don't know. Maybe we just need to keep him in a tree from here on out.
That's good to know. Well, we'll definitely put links to all that stuff in the blog post. I've gotten a kick out of some of your shirts too. So good stuff, Justin.
Yeah, I got one headed your way here shortly.
Oh, awesome! I appreciate it. Is it my my nerdy shirt?
It is it's my nerdy shirt too. The October is coming shirt. Like,
Heck
who doesn't love Game of Thrones? I needed a Game of Thrones inspired shirt.
Love Game of Thrones.
So we made one.
That's great. All right, Justin. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. And man, I hope you shoot that big one this year. Good luck.
Thanks, man. If I do, I will definitely let you know.
Awesome. And that's a wrap. But before we go, I've got a quick favor to ask. Usually at this point, I might ask you guys to leave a rating or review for the podcast on iTunes. But today I want to ask for something different. I'm curious if you might all be willing to give an in-person review for Wired to Hunt. And what I mean by this is if you enjoy this podcast, if you find it valuable, maybe today or tomorrow or this weekend, maybe you could just tell one new person about the Wired to Hunt podcast. Find one of your hunting buddies who doesn't listen yet and tell them why you think that maybe they should and how this podcast might help them. If you do that, man, I would be forever grateful. So thanks in advance. And speaking of thanks, I want to give a big thank you to our partners at Sitka Gear, Yeti Coolers, Matthews Archery, Maven Optics, the Whitetail Institute of North America, Trophy Ridge, and Huntera Maps. And finally, of course, thank you all for listening. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your support. And if you're hunting this weekend, good luck out there. And until next time, stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.